This review video will focus on the third and final entry of Peter F. Hamilton's Void Trilogy, The Evolutionary Void. This 694-page long novel was published in the year 2010 and unsurprisingly exhibits similar values in the semi-objective figures of merit regarding its science fiction hardness, scope of the literary world/universe, amount of original ideas, and dramatis personae, as the two preceding books in the series, The Dreaming Void and The Temporal Void. Hence, we are again dealing with a soft science fiction / science fantasy / full-on fantasy novel set in a literary universe of vast proportions, with a slew of novelties and with a large list of main and side characters. Unlike these other two novels, The Evolutionary Void was nominated for the Goodreads Choice Award for Best Science Fiction in 2010, even though it ultimately did not win this award. In terms of popular reception, The Evolutionary Void receives a combined rating of 4.3 out of 5 stars, based on thousands of Goodreads, Library Thing and Amazon reviews. It actually scores slightly higher than The Temporal Void by about 100th, which would be yet another not too significant example of the quote-unquote higher volume number equals higher ratings phenomenon that I mentioned already in a couple of videos. The story of The Evolutionary Void continues directly after the events of The Temporal Void, hence you should not be surprised if there are spoilers related to The Dreaming Void and The Temporal Void in the brief plot summary and the discussion that will follow. So beware. The identity of the second dreamer has been revealed, leading to a galaxy-wide hunt after this individual by government agent Paula Muro, the psychopathic Cat, and other operatives of various human factions, all of them either wanting to prevent or facilitate the pilgrimage of the Living Dream cult into the void. The second dreamer will have to come to terms with these life-altering developments, and it becomes obvious that eluding the various agents is not a long-term solution. The question now is who can be trusted. Meanwhile, the story of Edeard within the void is continued via a recounting of the addictive dreams communicated to the Gaia sphere. But now, the inspirational tale of this idealistic young man takes a darker and more troubling turn as he finds himself faced with powerful new enemies and temptations more powerful still once he has revealed the true nature of the void. In the Commonwealth, the first dreamer Inigo is unsure whether to release Edeard's final dream, which he chose not to share with anyone, fearing the potential backlash of its contents and what this could mean for himself and Living Dream. But all these choices may be for naught if the monomaniacal Elanthe, leader of the breakaway accelerator faction, is able to enter the void. For it is not paradise she seeks, but domination and ultimate power. As can be expected, all of the plot lines start to converge in this final installment of the Void Trilogy. This is specifically the case for the stories that take place in the Commonwealth. The plots featuring Araminta, Paula Muro, Oscar Monroe, Inigo, Troblum, Gorbonelli, and other characters all start to merge into a fast-paced and captivating narrative thread leading to a more or less satisfying conclusion. Also, the machinations, goals, and conflicting ideologies of the various human factions, namely the Accelerator faction and the Conservative faction, are finally completely revealed. Unfortunately, it turns out that the other factions that were mentioned in the previous novels do not play any particularly important role in the story. Furthermore, the Commonwealth story converges with Edeard's plot, apart from the recounting of Inigo's dreams, only barely at the very end and mostly within the context of an epilogue. Which brings me directly to the story of Edeard. Here we can observe probably the biggest contrast between The Evolutionary Void and the rest of the series. Edeard's story drastically changes from a combination of a coming-of-age story/political thriller to a variation of Ken Greenwood's 1986 novel Replay, which in turn inspired the 1993 movie Groundhog Day starring Bill Murray, or Hiroshi Sakurazaka's 2004 light novel All You Need Is Kill, which was the basis for the 2014 movie Edge of Tomorrow starring Tom Cruise and Emily Blunt. This is caused by Edeard uncovering the true nature of the Void, and by him harnessing the power to alter reality, including turning back time. Although, if we are pedantic, it is not true time travel, since the Void resets the conditions to a previous state, but has to consume energy, that is, it sucks in matter from the external galaxy as fuel for this process. These mechanical details are obviously unknown to Edeard, and thus he makes liberal use of this new power, at first. He has to learn the hard way that some resets can have unintended consequences. In general, Edeard's plot is focused more on his personal growth and responsibility. One highlight that I want to point out is the iteration where Edeard, who in the first two novels already had somewhat flexible morals, goes full-on totalitarian dictator out of frustration and pettiness, even though it ends as bad as you might expect. Obviously, these powers are the main allure of the Void to the living dream cult and the main reason that drives the pilgrimage. Edeard's story tackles some interesting points, but it is by no means unique here, as evidenced by the list of other novels and movies I mentioned earlier that address the very same premise. Just as an interjection, the Evolutionary Void still receives a 5 out of 5 rating in terms of originality and novelty, but this is mostly due to the fact that it is not really possible to give reasonably different ratings in a book series that barely has any time jumps between its installments. Thus, all these semi-subjective figures of merit are related to the whole trilogy rather than the individual novels. Another point of criticism is that some of the chapters featuring Edeard are somewhat sluggish, and it feels like Edeard has to do another chore before reaching the conclusion of his arc. This is not surprising, since the resets removed any real stakes in Edeard's story. Hence, Edeard's plotline is probably the weakest in the Evolutionary Void, both compared to the Commonwealth plot in the same novel, as well as compared to Edeard's chapters in the previous two books of the series. Finally, there are some points related to the mechanics or mode of operation of the Void that seem a bit contradictory to me. It is revealed in one of Edeard's chapters that he can only reset the Void along his personally experienced past. This turns out to cause a conundrum when he has to go further back in time than the birth of some of his grandchildren, basically abandoning them to non-existence. At the very end of the trilogy, he is however able to reincarnate them, probably owing to Edeard now being in direct contact with the makers of the Void. What is more confusing, however, is how the Void can alter reality when more than one individual possesses this power. Edeard shared his knowledge of resetting the Void in one of the last dreams, so this should definitely be an issue later. Indeed, the very last of Inigo's dreams shows a devolution of human society thanks in large parts to the excessive use of resets, since everyone started to just relive their most cherished memories or forge their own present as they see fit. But it is still not clear whether everyone who resets the Void starts to live in their own pocket universe, or whether there is a shared persistent universe that requires some sort of consensus before any reset can happen. The last dream and the devolution of human society would suggest that the former is the case, but it is not explained in the novel. Well, I guess this means that there still remains some food for thought and further discussions related to the Void Trilogy. A nerd's dream, really. Overall, the Evolutionary Void is a worthy end to the Void Trilogy. As you may already expect, the Evolutionary Void remains a soft science fiction / science fantasy / full-on fantasy novel set in a literary universe of vast proportions, with a plethora of novelties and with a large list of main and side characters. The fast-paced and gripping plots set in the Commonwealth were definitely what motivated me to continue reading. In contrast, Edeard's narrative thread within the Void is beyond its apex and does not reach the narrative quality it had in the previous two novels, at least in my opinion. The shift in tone of the story did not do it any favors, and it sometimes feels like an extended epilogue. Nevertheless, if you enjoyed reading the first two novels of the series, picking up the Evolutionary Void and finishing the Void Trilogy is a must. If you liked this video, you may also enjoy the other reviews and content on my channel. Feel free to leave a comment if you want to discuss the novels or if you want to suggest other books that I should review in the future. Please consider upvoting and subscribing, it is much appreciated. Thank you for watching and until next time.